Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new here, my name is Donna, and for those of you not new, thank you so much for continuing to come back and support my channel. I appreciate all of you so very much for being here today. Today is the next installment in my palette roulette series, in which we let an app choose a palette that I use all week long, and then I come back to you at the end of the week, today, and go over my opinions of the palette, what I found to be true, and my final thoughts on the palette, and then we choose another palette. So today we are going over the Juvia's Place Afrique palette. This is a palette that came out in late 2018. It was, I think, August 2018. Inspired by African culture. It does hold 4.5 stars on Ulta, and it holds 5.0 stars on Juvia's Place. I think that we see that as a recurring event on the actual website that, you know, is the company website. It typically is 5 stars. Each one of those places holds 76 reviews for the palette. So not a whole lot, but I think that that's a good amount of stars for their star rating for each one of those websites. This palette does retail for $20, but you can find it on Juvia's Places consistently throwing out percentage offs. They have always got a sale going on their product on their website. Ulta also has always got some kind of deal going on, and you can consistently get it for less than that price. It does have 0.63 ounces of product, or 0.0525 ounces per pan. So looking at the packaging, you will see that it does not look anything unlike any other Juvia's Place palette. It does have the beautiful artwork with the ladies on the front and kind of a shadow image of the one main character there. It is orange and kind of this like bright blue with gold raised lettering on it. The back of the palette does tell a story. It says, a true representation of beauty, art, and glamour. The Afrique eyeshadow collection consists of 12 highly pigmented eyeshadows, gives you the ingredients list, and lets you note that it is a cruelty-free product and that it is formulated in the US of A and distributed by Juvia's Place, who resides in Finland. I guess that's new. I didn't know that. It does have a shelf life on it of 24 months. I don't know about you. I tend to keep my powder products like until they start showing some kind of signs that they have gone bad. I will keep them longer than those shelf lives a lot for. So the packaging does look like this. When you open it up, there is not a mirror here. That is true to most Juvia's Place palettes. I don't actually think I own one Juvia's Place palette that has a mirror. I don't think. The artwork on the outside definitely continues on the inside, and the color scheme also continues on the inside. That is really what I love about the Juvia's Place palettes, is that the color scheme on the outside reigns true for the inside, and the shadows in the palette as well. This is the shades in the palette. It's very colorful but neutral all at the same time, and I know that some of you are probably looking at that going, that's not neutral. It kind of is. I pulled this eye together with this palette today. It is a very neutral eye look, in my opinion. Of course, some people maybe don't think it is, but I also use like reds and burgundies as a neutral tone, and a lot of these shadows in here are not neutral. I will give you that, but there is a neutral element to this palette, which I think is good. This is a great palette for people that are maybe not inclined to move towards color, but do want some pops of color in their eye look. Most of the pops of color in this palette are on the primary end, so you can mix them really well and come up with other colors that you might not, you know, see in this palette, and it's just got to do with knowing color theory and how to mix colors properly. There are 12 shades. As I said, there are 7 mattes and 5 shimmers. The 5 shimmers are this one here, this one here, this one here, and these 2 here on the ends. The colorful mattes are primary, except for the red, which is more of a maroon in tone. The 2 browns are, there's one that leans a little more orange, and there's one that leans a little more neutral. But other than that, like, these 3 and this one definitely are of the primary range. The yellow has to be built up quite extensively to really stand true to its yellow tone. I do find, though, too, with my skin coloring, it doesn't really ring any real yellow in its color on my skin. But that might be different for people who are not as, like, golden in tone as I am. My undertones lean very, very golden. So the yellow kind of comes out more of a, like, almost a lime green on my skin tone. The blue and the green in here were a bit patchy. They feel a little bit drier than the other mattes that are in this palette, or those that I am used to in other Juvia's Place palettes. I found them to need a lot of work. I had to blend and blend and blend these guys, and even still, I ended up with blends that I wasn't super pleased with 100% of the time. The orange, red, and browns in here were great, but not all of them had the same Juvia's Place pigmentation that we are typically used to. While I think that their pigmentation was good, I don't think that it was as good as some of my other Juvia's Place palettes. With that being said, like with this eye look, that maroon stands out, but I did pack that maroon on multiple times, blended it out multiple times, and then still ended up packing on at the end and just leaving it that way in order for it to show up in my eye look like I really wanted it to. The 5 shimmers in here were also very good, though the red one here wasn't true to Juvia's Place formula either. I don't feel it just didn't have that shock and that sparkle that you get with a lot of Juvia's Place shimmers, and I don't know if it's because of the color of it. I had other reds that were shimmers in other Juvia's Place palettes that showed up quite well, so I don't know if it's because of the color of it or if it's a different formulation. I'm just not really sure. It wasn't as good as the other ones. And this silver over here, which is actually listed on the website as a shimmer peach, which I don't see any peach in this, was a wee bit chunky. This worked really well with or without eye primer. I will say that because it is vegan and cruelty free, you will find some staining on your lids with some of the darker shades. I found that the blue was the worst, in my opinion. The red really wasn't that bad. The green kind of left a little hint of a stain on my eye. But honestly, I don't care about that kind of stuff. I just put, the next day, I just put a layer of primer on and covered it with more eyeshadow. So staining doesn't really hinder my want, will, and desire to use a palette, but I know it does for some. I also know that sometimes with vegan and cruelty-free formulas, because they're made more with dyes, sometimes those will irritate a person's eyes. I do have super sensitive eyes, and they have been known to irritate mine, but these ones did not irritate my eyes at all. They blended pretty well for the most part. There were some patchiness with certain colors. As I said, the blue and the green did have quite a bit of patchiness, but they lasted forever on my eyes. With a primer, they lasted between 12 and 16 hours. Without a primer, they still lasted between 10 and 12. So if you're a person like myself who needs to put in a long work day, this is going to be the shadow formula for you. I know that you will end your day looking just as fresh as you did when you went to work that morning. They had next to no fallout. What I did notice, however, today is that when I was going in with this gold It's this gold shade here. It was the first time I really kind of slathered it on almost all of my eye. I had had it in eye looks before, but I just kind of patted it. When you go in with it, if you do not wet it, it will cause fallout. I did have quite a bit of fallout on my cheeks from this shade, but the green one did have a little bit of fallout as well, but really next to no fallout for the entirety of the palette. I didn't really find that this would be one that I would have to come to you and say, hey, do your face makeup first. I did the whole week with this palette just because I wanted to make sure that it didn't have fallout tendencies, but I found that, and except for today, I really didn't need that to be my process, which isn't my typical process. With that being said, let's do some swatches of this palette. I am going to do this first row, and then this row. We're just going to do it on my hand like I have been doing as of recently with all of my swatching. So here's the thing though too, these shadow names are, there's no way. There's no way that I'm going to be able to pronounce them. So I'm going to try and remember to put the shadow name into my editing as I am going through them, because I can't pronounce these. I don't even want to try because I don't want to disrespect the language that these shadows are named for. So that's where that goes. The first shade in the palette is this one. It is a pretty primary matte blue. The second one is this one, which is a matte primary orange. The third one is this matte primary green, and the fourth one is this one, which is a shimmer jade green, which actually is one of my very favorites in the palette. So that is that first row. I really loved, honestly, the greens in this palette. I loved this palette, period, but I think if you guys have been around for a while, you know I have an affinity for green. I do love a green eyeshadow, even though I don't necessarily think greens and blues look the best on me. I do love green. It is my favorite color, so I try and make it work as much as possible, but that shimmer green was one of my favorites to use in the palette. So that was this first row here. As I said, the blue and the green do feel a little bit dry to the touch than do all the other shadows in this palette. The second row is going to be this one, which is a matte burgundy. It is in my eye look today. I do like this shade as well. It is one of my favorites to play with in this palette. Then we have this one, which is a shimmer violet. It kind of leans blue when paired with the matte blue in this palette, but oh my gosh, it is so pretty. It's such a pretty shade. Then we have this one, which is that matte primary yellow, kind of like a mustard yellow color, like the bright, like French's mustard yellow. And then we have this one, which is kind of an orange brown. It is a matte. So that is the whole second row of this palette. That first color, the red, the burgundy, is a really pretty burgundy shade. I used the browns in this palette more than any other color, as I'm sure that you can guess. The lighter brown I used almost every single day to put into my crease as just that transition shade. And then the orange brown I used quite often just to deepen up that crease, especially if I was going in with the orange or the red afterwards. Last row in this palette does have this shade here, which is, as I said, documented on the Juvia's Place website and even Ulta, I think, as a shimmer peach. It doesn't resemble a peach to me at all. It's definitely a silver, in my opinion. Then we have this one, which is very much a flesh tone matte brown shade. It can lean a little bit peach. It can also lean a little more brown depending on what you're putting it with. Then we have your shimmer red color. This one's name is Fifi, which I thought, or Fi-Fi, which I thought was super cute. It is a shimmer burgundy. I did wear this in an eye look with the silver and the matte red. That was just a really beautiful, like I would call it a Valentine's Day eye. It was such a beautiful eye look, and I will have pictures of that in this video. And then we have the shimmer gold. It's more of like a bronzy gold, kind of a dark, deep, like brown gold, but those are the last shades in the palette. That is your third row that consists of mostly shimmers. So what I will say about this palette, it is a pretty true to Juvia's Place palette. I would say it does lack a little bit in the pigmentation that you're used to with a Juvia's Place palette, but it still performs really, really well. I was able to get neutral eye looks out of it as well as colorful eye looks out of it, and some really beautifully toned eye looks. If you are familiar with color theory, it does have all the primary colors that you would need to mix and match to create different tones that you might want to have instead of the ones that are in here. I mean, if you mix this red and blue together, you would get a beautiful purple color that would pair really well with the purple shimmer that's in there, and like so on and so forth. If you're familiar with color theory, the color wheel, you could do many, many things with this palette. And I think that this is a great palette for a person who might be intermediate in makeup. While I don't think it's great for a person who is a beginner because of the pigmentation of it, and because some of these shades are a little bit more hard to blend, I do think for the intermediate user who maybe doesn't have the colorful makeup that they want in their collection, but still really wants that neutral piece in a palette, this is a pretty perfect palette. I think that people look at Juvia's Place palettes and all they see is colors, so I think a person might be mistaken if they thought that this was a colorful palette just by looking at the outside of the packaging, or really opening up and looking at the inside without giving it a second thought. It is quite neutral in tone. It does have some beautiful eye looks that you can create on the neutral side from this palette, but it also has a good range of color. These are pretty pigmented. They do perform at an intensity that kind of behooves Juvia's Place, but they can also be sheared out quite well and show up a little less than. And I think a lot of the reason for that is because they aren't consistent with the other Juvia's Place palettes, in which the pigmentation is just wham, there you go, here you have it, here's your red for you. I did have a lot of fun with this palette. I do plan on keeping it in my collection. Juvia's Place is a company that I almost have a completionist mindset for. I don't have, I think, 3 or 4 of their palettes, and those palettes are definitely more neutral in tone, like the Nubian, the Warrior 2. I don't have those for sure. There might be another one that I don't have. But other than that, I do have most of their other palettes. I have an entire collection of them behind me, and I love them. I think that they are really, really a great company, really a great indie brand. And if you're going to own, just a few palettes, I would be remiss if I did not say one of Juvia's Place palettes should be in that collection. What do you guys know about the palette? Have you used this palette before? Do you love it? Do you hate it? I would be interested to know, as I'm sure anybody that is watching this would be interested in, to hear everybody's thought processes on this palette. Let me know what your thoughts are on Juvia's Place. So now we're going to choose the palette that I will use next week, and we are going to say goodbye to the Juvia's Place Afrique palette. I am sad to see it go, if I have to be honest. I just feel like that is probably the most versatile palette in my collection, because it's got those primary colored shadows in it that can be mixed to make pretty much any shadow that you want to. For those of you who are new to my palette roulette series, I do use a Samsung Note 9. I did get a decision wheel type app out of our app store. But you can also find them on the iOS system if you are dealing with an Apple phone or iPad or whatever it is. It does look like this. You just put everything that you want it to decide in the wheel, and then as we use the palettes through this palette roulette series, I do take them out, and as we haul items in, if we get new palettes, I do put those new palettes. We have been known to do 2 palettes in a week just because we maybe spin for a palette that doesn't have very many shadows in them. I've also last week, it picked a palette for me and I said, yo, I'm not going to have any fun with this palette. So this isn't built as a declutter series for me, but it has become, the monster that it has become has allowed me to really figure out my makeup aesthetic and what I love and what I don't love. And I can tell you, looking at my collection, what I'm going to love prior to even touching it. The biggest thing it's helped me with is honestly looking at a makeup palette that is being launched and saying, yes, I would use that. Or no, I know that I'm not going to. There's that. So I really enjoy doing it. If you want to do it with me, I would love to have some friends out here in this world. So all of the palettes that we have to choose from are in my wheel, and to spin it, we just press this button here and we let it choose a new palette for us. And it picked the Pure X BoxyCharm collab. And if I remember correctly, I loved this palette when it first came to us. I haven't used it in forever, so I'm going to go look for it. I'll be right back. Alright guys, this is the palette that I'll be using next week. It is the Pure X BoxyCharm palette. It came to us in one of our BoxyCharms, was made specifically for BoxyCharm. And this is what it looks like. I have to be honest with you. I did used to like this palette, but I'm not sure, looking at it right now, I'm not sure why, because this definitely doesn't look like it's up my alley, but it does have a couple pops of color, and it's mostly like in that peach pink world. We will see. We will see. But at least it's not a palette that I'm like, no, I already know I'm not going to have fun with it. I might have fun with it. I do know that this is getting old in my collection. I cannot remember how long ago we got it, but we will see. I'm excited to come to you guys next week and go over how I felt about the Pure X BoxyCharm palette. Hopefully you guys liked this video. Hopefully you liked it enough that you're considering giving it a big thumbs up. Really does help us out here, and I also hope that you liked it, or you liked me enough that you're considering subscribing to my channel. It's free. It really does help me out, and I would love to see you guys as part of my YouTube family here and catch up with you in the comment section. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you're having an amazing January. It's almost over, and I cannot believe that. And until next time, guys. Bye.